We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Mr. Secretary General.
All men are created equal.
Mr. President.
They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights.
Distinguished delegates.
Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Happy Proletariat Day to all of you listening by way of radio, listening by way of 800 AM WSHO Sunshine 800 AM, and of course those of you listening to us by way of the internet at WSHO.com or on your smart device using the TuneIn app or even the RDIO app. Welcome to the show today. This is the Current Word broadcast here on WSHO, Sunshine 800 AM. And I am your humble guest host, Trey Roberts. Tea Party Trey, if you will, sitting in for, I guess Kathleen's embracing the proletariat holiday. Of course, today being Labor Day and the history of Labor Day being steeped in the labor unions. Some people might say the only good thing that's come about with the creation of unions. But of course, today celebrates the workers around the world. Unite! And just a little background there about Labor Day that most people don't know. I had the conversation this morning with my daughter that we're not celebrating. She thought she was getting off from school today, but we homeschool her, and she is not getting off. Well, actually, I think she did kind of get off from school today, but Luke, it's always good to see you. By the way, if you are jumping into the chat room by way of ustream.tv/WSHO, or you went to the website, WSHO.com, and you went to that website, clicked on the watch and listen, fear not. We are still live today. We are live on this Monday, September the 1st, and you can still chat to your heart's content in the chat room. And if you'd like to give us a call, anything we're going to talk about today, you can feel free to give us a call at 504-527-0800, 527-0800 to be a part of the program. We'd love to hear from you. Got a lot to get to today, so we're going to jump right in. I kind of wanted to handle today a little bit differently than we normally do. The Current Word broadcast is a current events show from a biblical point of view, or as best we can from a biblical perspective, to help you kind of wade through the things that you may be dealing with in your own life, in your own community, what you see on the news, what's happening in our nation politically and socially and economically around the world, just all over. Try to help you look at things from a biblical perspective. Sometimes the show kind of gets a bad rap because, you know, it's not the theology hour. It's not the current doctrine show. And but we do try to give you, I know Kathleen does a great job in preparing, trying to give you the current events that are going on around you from a biblical perspective. You hear the Republican perspective, you hear the Democrat perspective, you get the talking head perspectives all day long. But this is an hour here on WSHO where we try to give you a little bit of a biblical perspective. And that's what I want to do today. And I want to start off with a question. And I'm going to need you to give me a call at 504-527-0800. I know the weather's not that great, so you should not be barbecuing too much or partying down with your family too much on this proletariat day. But nevertheless, here's the question. In light of everything that's been going on, and I would say that probably if we go back to Trayvon Martin, moving forward, and it could be in looking over the last several years, this might even go back to Henry Louis Gates. If Henry Louis Gates doesn't sound familiar to you, let me just refresh your memory real quick. Henry Louis Gates is the professor, the Harvard professor, who claimed that he was racially profiled and harassed at his home by the Boston or the Massachusetts police. I forget the exact Cambridge police. And President Obama stepped in it. And by stepping in it, I mean he jumped out ahead of anything that had come out, any of the facts before anybody knew anything. He just waded into it and said that he believed the police acted stupidly. And that led to the famous beer summit. And we don't hear President Obama at all on issues of race, social issues. We don't hear from him at all until once again we hear after the Trayvon Martin killing and the death of Trayvon Martin. President Obama then once again weighs into the quote-unquote racial fray and says that he could have very well been a Trayvon Martin, or more importantly, Trayvon Martin, if President Obama had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin. And everybody ran out there, threw hoodies on, took pictures, put them up on the internet, felt good about themselves. But when the facts of the case were laid out, and keep in mind, the district attorney originally was not going to bring this to trial. The DOJ stepped in. We have now since learned that the United States Department of Justice has a civil rights division that actually, now that I'm thinking about it, actually goes back before the Henry Louis Gates incident. It goes to the Black Panthers and the voting rights violations. They were convicted under the DOJ, the Department of Justice, under the Bush administration. They were at the sentencing phase, and the charges were dropped by the new Department of Justice run under Eric Holder. So going back to Trayvon Martin, the DOJ, the Civil Rights Division, steps in, puts a lot of pressure. Sharpton shows up, Jackson shows up, and the cameras show up, and now they went on ahead and they charged George Zimmerman. It went to trial, and George Zimmerman was found not guilty in the murder of Trayvon Martin. By all means, he absolutely shot and killed that young man, and that was very tragic. However, George Zimmerman was not a white person, as the media made him out to be. They called him a white Hispanic. And we had a lot of outcry from that. But then the incident, lesser known, but there was an incident of I forget the gentleman's name, large man up in New York, big guy, probably 6'4", 300 plus. And he was a 3-time convicted, I don't know if it's a misdemeanor or a felony, whatever the case may be, bootlegging cigarettes. And if you watch the video, he was, for about 5 minutes, he was asked by the police, individuals, and then a couple, and then a series of police to acquiesce, and we're gonna put you in handcuffs, and we're gonna question you, we're gonna take you down, we're gonna search you, do whatever the case may be. And as polite as he was, ever so polite, he's a big guy, refused to cooperate. Bam, gets taken to the ground, and he gets choked to death. Not making light of it, just trying to run through some of the details real quick to get into my premise here. And then we jump into Ferguson. We've seen Ferguson over the last several weeks up in Missouri. We've seen the unfortunate killing of Michael Brown. Facts are still not all out there yet. You have those who think that Officer Darren Wilson acted completely as he should have as a police officer. We don't know that based on the facts yet. I don't know anybody who thinks that if Officer Darren Wilson shot a young man on his knees, begging not to shoot, submitting to an arrest, if you put 6 slugs and one that ultimately killed Michael Brown, took his life, I don't know anybody who doesn't think that Officer Darren Wilson should be held responsible for that and brought to justice and quite honestly be sent away for life. On the flip side, there are a lot of people that also believe that the young man 10 minutes prior had committed a crime, stole some cigars, Swisher Sweets. We know from the independent family autopsy he had marijuana in his system. We also know that he allegedly fought the officer while the officer was still in his vehicle, fracturing the officer's eye socket, reaching for his gun. And we know that in the final moments, based on the autopsy, all the bullet shots from what Michael Baden and the family's independent autopsy reports show, that he was actually moving, that all the shots were face forward. So he didn't have any shots under his arm. If his hands had been up, all the shots were, in fact, follow along with, and also eyewitness reports that flowed out on the internet that there was one gentleman who said, man, I couldn't believe, I thought the cop was missing because Michael just kept going toward the cop, shot after shot after shot. No one deserves to die, but there's some things you can do that can get you shot if you don't submit to police authority. Not even 2 days later, a young man was shot to death. Looks like suicide by cop. Young black male shot to death by St. Louis police officers. The whole thing was captured on video. Turns out he had a knife. But again, when you're yelling and running toward the police, yelling, shoot me, MFers, shoot me, that's kind of a bad position to put any police officer in. So in light of all of these, and around the country, there are instances that come up with white police officers shooting, quote unquote, black citizens. So 504-527-0800. Here's the question. How do we handle, in light of all the things that have kind of reared its ugly head here, how do we handle the issue of race in the church? And are we handling it correctly? Are we handling the issue of race biblically? You have an opinion on that? Weigh in. Give us a call, 504-527-0800. We're going to take our first break. Give us a call, 504-527-0800. Trey Roberts sitting in for vacationing Kathleen Benfield here on Labor Day on WSHO, Sunshine 800 AM.
So, Andrea, what seems to be the problem?
Well, doctor, I think I've got something in my eye.
Well, let's take a look here. Is it bothering you?
Not really at all. I mean, my husband suggested I come in. I really don't know why.
Well, there is something there. It's this rather large log hanging out of your eye.
A log? I don't think so. I don't think I have any real eye problems. I can see just fine.
Oh, watch it there. You can look around. It's going to damage the equipment.
Sorry. Now, my husband, he's the one that needs to come in and see you. I mean, just the other day, I saw this little speck of something in his eye. I tried to help him out with it, but he got a nasty bruise.
Jesus said in Matthew 7:3, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, but pay no attention to the log in your own eye? For better relationships and a better life, stop the obsessive focus on blaming or trying to fix others."
So we really need to remove this log, Andrea.
Really? You just can't give me some eye drops or something?
No.
A message from Sunshine 800 WSHO. When you got on board this thing called the Christian life, you somehow thought things would be like, well, smooth sailing. Now, you didn't expect life to be perfect, but it's turned out to be more of a roller coaster ride. The fast drops, the hairpin turns, the surprising twists. Yeah, that works great when you're on a roller coaster, but not so much fun when it happens in real life. And it seems you have no control over it. You feel like you're just along for the ride. A very turbulent, unpredictable ride. We like to think it'd be better if God would just give us a smooth ride throughout life. Human nature doesn't really work out that simply. Give us a smooth ride for too long and we start thinking, what do we need God for? We've got everything under control. But somehow knowing that life could throw us for a curve actually keeps us more realistic about life. Remember, God knows what kind of ride you're on and He knows what's around the next turn. A consistent relationship with God keeps things in perspective through all the many wild ups and downs of life. Thanks for listening to Sunshine 800 WSHO.
Rock worldwide. 504-527-0800 is the number to call to be a part of the program. Welcome back to The Current Word here on WSHO Sunshine 800 AM. In the second half of the program today, I'm going to have a guest on with us, Stanley Levy. And I hope I'm saying that right. It's either Levy or Levy. And he has a podcast, a radio show on the internet called Black Man Thinking. And it comes on Monday nights. And he's going to be on the show with us talking about some of these issues. But my question for you today is how do we handle the issue of race in the church? And I'm not talking about how the world has a prescription for it, because I don't buy the world's prescription for this. I don't think the world really has any opportunity to correct or fix the issues of quote unquote race. And you'll hear me today say quote unquote a lot of times when I refer to race, when I refer to black, when I refer to white. That'll always be quote unquote. And I'll weigh in and tell you why as we get into this. But are we handling the issue correctly? Are we handling it according to the Bible? So we're going to go to the phone lines right now. We're going to go to Gail on line 1. Gail, welcome to The Current Word here on WSHO with Trey Roberts.
Thanks, Trey.
So what do you think about this? What are we? How are we doing as a church on this issue of race?
Well, your question triggered something in my mind, that there's a book that was written by a black pastor who is now deceased, but he died in 2002, but he was a pastor in the Lower Ninth Ward, and his book is called What Love Can Do. And he himself was the descendant of slaves in the New Orleans area. And after the Emancipation Proclamation, the black community itself was having its own struggles, because there were light-skinned freed people and they were dark-skinned, and then on top of that, of course, they had the bitterness and resentment and hatred toward the whites for what had happened to them. But this book is written from a pastor's perspective about the black community at that time. It's called What Love Can Do because he spent his whole life not only teaching but showing them what love can do. And the book reminds me so much of Martin Luther King saying, I have chosen love because hate is too great a burden to bear.
Right.
And in fact, the black man who at Ole Miss, who was, I can't remember his name right now, who was gunned down and left for dead, I'll think of his name in a minute. Anyway, he said that we have, and he's talking to black and white, he said we have a sacred obligation to transform the face of America by loving one another. And I think that's what the church needs to preach.
So, Gail, let me ask you this. So if I'm understanding you correctly, as many Christian leaders have said throughout the years, and I mean, here we stand in 2014. It's the 50th anniversary of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Right. Obviously, Dr. King was assassinated in 1968, but I think the speech that you were just referring to, I'm going to play an excerpt of that in just a few minutes.
Great.
But that was a speech from 1967. And it seems to be, but it's the kind of love that the Bible talks about.
Exactly.
See, and that's where I think, if I hear some non-Christian bring up the issue of love, it sounds like some kind of hippy dippy,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's not the kind of, like, no greater love has anyone known that he laid his life down for his brother. The kind of love that Christ showed us as the church. But my question to you is, and you kind of touched on it, you said that after years and years of being mistreated, like I have a brother that we go to church together. He's the first person in his family of his generations. He's the first generation that's been allowed to go into City Park here in New Orleans.
Wow.
So we're not that far removed from a lot of pain. And so how do we not ignore past hurt, but how do we live in the present and sow those seeds of love and true reconciliation in Jesus Christ in the future? How do we do that as a church?
Well, I think each church and each individual needs to answer that in view of the circumstances that face them individually. In this book I'm referring to, What Love Can Do, at the very end, the pastor, who himself was very white, he was the son of a French farmer and an African slave woman, but he could have passed for white. But he came after the Emancipation Proclamation. He came back to the black community that was torn apart by race, actually, and in St. John's Parish there was a sheriff who was just gunning for all the young black men, just determined to wipe them out. And this pastor stood in front of this white sheriff, and he said, "You listen to me, and when I'm finished talking, you can start shooting, but you'll have to shoot me first." And that story to me typifies it's where I am right now, where the church is right now. I think we have to stand in front of those who hate and say, you listen to me, and whenever you want to start shooting, shoot me first.
Gail, I appreciate the phone call. Good points, and I think I'll reiterate that book to everyone that you brought up. It's called What Love Can Do. I don't know if it's still out there in publishing, but we'll look it up and try to maybe link it up into the chat room or whatever the case. But thank you so much, Gail, for the phone call. I want to go take a quick break. I see we have some more calls, so don't hang up the phone. We're coming to you right after this next quick break. I want to play just a clip of at this break. I want to play the clip of Dr. King's speech. So we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come right back. 504-527-0800. Phil the Patriot on line 2. We're coming to you next. Don't hang up. Don't go anywhere. 504-527-0800. Weigh in. Are we doing this thing biblically when it comes to race? Give us a call. Let me know. This is Trey Roberts sitting in for Kathleen Benfield here on WSHO Sunshine 800 AM.
Recognize that out of one blood, God made all men dwell upon the face of the earth. Let us be dissatisfied until that day when nobody will shout white power, when nobody will shout black power, but everybody will talk about God's power and human power.
The future of America is at stake, and frankly, many Americans are frightened at the direction we're taking.
Welcome back to The Current Word here on WSHO Sunshine 800 AM. Trey Roberts sitting in for Kathleen Benfield. And, of course, if you want to weigh into the program, anything we're talking about today, you have comments, thoughts, ideas, any of that kind of thing, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 504-527-0800. That clip that we played during the last break was Dr. King, and that was an excerpt of the speech. And I get so moved when I hear that particular part of the speech, because that's Dr. King speaking biblical truth. It's not about white power. It's not about black power, but it's only in God's power. I know this guy will agree with me on that, so we're going to go back to the phone lines right now. We're going to go to Phil the Patriot. Phil, welcome to The Current Word here on WSHO with Trey Roberts.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm great.
It's a pleasure and a blessing to be on the air, and I'm greatly blessed, and I hope that all y'all are greatly blessed. And I'm living the American dream even as I speak. But let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. It's going to get harder and harder and harder to live the American dream. It's because these people that are in power up there in Brain, Washington, the District of Colonialism, they have a plan to destroy our country right now. It's easy for me to see. There's something else that's easy for me to see. I knew from the very beginning that George Zimmerman was innocent. I knew from the very beginning that Merritt Landry was innocent. And I knew from the very beginning that Officer Darren Wilson is innocent. It's because this government has an anti-Christian, anti-American agenda that it's easy for me to see, and it should be easy for y'all to see by now. You know.
Now hold on, let me jump in there for a second, Phil. Let me jump in with you. What you're saying is that from the beginning of the Zimmerman, for those of you that may be listening to us in other places, the Merritt Landry, is it Landry or Landrew?
Merritt Landry.
Merritt Landry was a quote unquote white father at his house. There was someone was inside of the property line of his uptown New Orleans home. I think 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It turns out this kid has multiple arrest accounts, breaking and entering, and even after Merritt shot him, this was shortly after the Zimmerman verdict came out. he was busted again for breaking and entering, even after he had been shot in the head for doing the same thing earlier, and was arrested several months later after he got out of the hospital. Claimed he was a vegetable, but he was still a good enough vegetable to attempt to break in again. So, of course, all charges were dropped. It was a self-defense issue. And then, but here's my question to you, Phil. With all of these circumstances, we really don't know until all the facts come out. But you get the feeling, because you know how, unfortunately, government operates today in the progressive, liberal, atheistic, socialistic, everybody's equal, demonic mindset of our political leaders today. You pretty much jump to a conclusion that they're wrong when whatever they call right is typically wrong, and whatever they call wrong is typically right. Would you agree?
Exactly. And I want to say something that they led us to believe. No, I didn't know that guy was back out on the street again. And they led us to believe this guy was a vegetable and he was in a hospital. And I was kind of surprised that here this guy is. He's back out on the streets again. And they showed a video on channel 666, and it showed Marshall Coulter walking up to a door and trying to open it. Well, brothers and sisters, what you saw in that video, if you saw it, happens thousands upon thousands of times a day. And let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. If a thug opens that door, he's coming in the house, and he's going to rob you. He might kill you, and if you're not dead, he's going to ransack the house. So you can believe that one little video they showed on TV, that happens thousands of times just here in the city of New Orleans, possibly millions of times in all the great cities of America here.
So, Phil, how do we handle race inside the issue of race, quote unquote race, inside the church? And the reason why I'm saying quote unquote race is because Dr. King, you heard him in that last break we took. He was quoting from the book of Acts that from one blood all nations were created. We have scientific proof in things like the Human Genome Project that says there is no difference amongst the skin colors of people, what we classically call race, but there is one human race. So how do we handle that in the church? Are we doing a good job? Are we failing? How do we handle it biblically?
I think that a lot of churches are handling it right, and I think a whole lot of churches are handling it wrong, because I think that they're making real basic mistakes, and we need to get right back to the basic language of the Bible completely. And I agree with Martin Luther King. We're all of the human race. We're all brothers and sisters. We can, right now the media is pretending that it's trying to minimize racism when they're actually trying to maximize it. Right now, our government, including Barack Obama, the Muslim misleader, Antichrist in chief, he's a misleader too. He acts like he's trying to minimize the racial problem when he's actually trying to maximize the racial problem. He is a follower of Satan. There's something going on here, because he's following an insidious playbook, and I could tell from the phrases that the media often uses. And this last one with Officer Darren Wilson, they keep saying unarmed person, unarmed teenager, unarmed this, unarmed that, Let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. That guy was going to kill that police officer. He was going to try to take that gun away from that police officer. He slammed the door on the man's hand and his side. He punched him in his eye socket. And you know what, brothers and sisters? If that ever happens to me, I would do the exact same thing that George Zimmerman done, the exact same thing that Merritt Landry done, and I definitely would have did the exact same thing that Officer Darren Wilson did. And that's how the police are trained. And
that's regardless of whatever shade the person is, correct?
Yeah, whatever color they are. If there's somebody trying to kill you, don't pay no attention to what color they are.
That's right.
Kill them, because they're going to kill you. And I have plenty of friends and family in the military and police. And let me tell you what, brothers and sisters, they try to destroy our military. They're defunding it constantly. They're trying to hurt our police. The Anti-Christian Lunatic Union tries, the ACLU.
ACLU, yeah.
They try to tie the police officers' hands where they can't defend themselves even. Let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. I know this for sure. It was George Zimmerman a year ago. It was Merritt Landry, months ago. It was Officer Darren Wilson a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be me and you today and tomorrow, because they're trying to set an example where they can come after us. They're portraying evil as good and good as evil. They're painting evil as good, and they're painting good as evil. And it's just easy for me to say. And the way the church can handle this is to truly study that Bible completely and totally and pray before you even go do your little sermons in the churches and all. And bring our people truly together. Do the exact opposite of what our government is doing. Do the exact opposite of what our media is doing. If you notice, the people, the leftist lunatics hate the Blaze News, and they hate Fox News. And you know why they hate the Fox News and the Blaze News? Because they tell the truth. They hate Mark Levin. They hate Sean Hannity. They hate, the Reverend Bill Shanks. They hate the great Rush Limbaugh. They hate me and you. They hate this radio show we're on right now. As a matter of fact, they try to do everything they can through these new laws and all to ban true radio, because they know that the truth sets you free, and they know that lies put you in bondage.
Well, Phil, give me a victorious in Jesus yell as we let you go.
Yes, sir. Listen, the last thing I want you to do is I want you to wake up, stand up, rise up and wise up. I want you to stand in every gap, watch every wall, rescue the innocent, defend the helpless, and most of all, get out there in the battlefield. Yeah.
Thank you, Phil. The views and opinions of Phil the Patriot do not necessarily reflect those of the station here at WSHO, but look, you get that dude wound up. He is unstoppable rhetorically, and you notice he never says or sounds like he's breathing. So thank you, Phil, for giving us a phone call. We're going to go to another break real quick. We still have some people on the line. If you're on the line holding, don't hang up. We're coming to you right out of this break. I want to play a clip. Luke, if we get that charged up for me, the clip of Bill Cosby. This was a speech that Bill Cosby gave, an excerpt of a speech that Bill Cosby gave at an NAACP convention in 2004. 10 years ago, he gave this speech. Listen to the rousing ovation. It's only about 3.5 minutes. We'll use it as our break. And when we come right out of the break, we'll go back to the phone lines. So let's go ahead and get that. Is that ready? Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and take our break. And when we come back, we're going to go to the phone lines. We're asking you today, how are we handling the issue of race in the church? Are we doing it correctly? Are we doing it biblically? What do you think? 504-527-0800. Get in the chat room and chat us up. Tell us what you think in there, or give us a call. 504-527-0800. Trey Roberts sitting in for Kathleen Benfield on The Current Word here on WSHO.
In the old days, you couldn't cookie school because behind every drawn shade was an eye. And before your mother got off the bus into the house, she knew exactly where you had gone, who had gone into the house. Parents don't know that today. I'm talking about these people who cry when their son is standing there in an orange suit. Where were you when he was 2? Where were you when he was 12? Where were you when he was 18? And how come you don't know he had a pistol? These are not political criminals. These are people going around stealing Coca-Cola. People getting shot in the back of the head over a piece of pound cake. And then we all run out and we're outraged. Oh, the cops shouldn't have shot him. What the hell was he doing with the pound cake in his hand? Brown versus the Board of Education is no longer the white person's problem. We've got to take the neighborhood back. We've got to go in there. It's right around the corner. It's standing on the corner. It can't speak English. It doesn't want to speak English. I can't even talk the way these people talk. Why you ain't where you is? Go where? I don't know who these people are. And I blamed the kid until I heard the mother talk. And then I heard the father talk. This is all in the house. Everybody knows it's important to speak English, except these knuckleheads. You can't land a plane with why you ain't where. You can't be a doctor with that kind of crap coming out of your mouth. Why can't you hit the streets? Why can't you clean it out yourself? It's our time now, ladies and gentlemen. It is our time. And I have good news for you. It's not about money. It's about you doing something that ordinarily we do. Get in somebody else's business. It's time for you to not accept this language that these people are speaking, which will take them nowhere. What the hell good is Brown versus the Board of Education if nobody wants it? I mean, this is the future, and all of these people who've lined up and done whatever, they've got to be wondering, what the hell happened? Brown versus the Board of Education. These people who marched and were hit in the face with rocks and punched in the face to get an education. And we got these knuckleheads walking around, don't want to learn English. When you go to the church, look at the stained glass things of Jesus. Look at them. Is Jesus smiling? Not in one picture. So tell your friends, let's try to do something. Let's try and make Jesus smile. Let's start parenting. Thank you. Thank you.
Rock worldwide. 504-527-0800 is the number to call to be a part of the program. Trey Roberts, Tea Party Trey, if you will, sitting in for Kathleen Benfield here on The Current Word on WSHO. And we're talking today. I'd like to, before I give my opinion, maybe get a few more callers. So we're going to go to the, we're going to go back to the phone lines right now, and we're going to go to Jay on line 1. Jay, welcome to The Current Word here on WSHO with Trey Roberts.
Yes, hello.
Talk to me, Jay. What you got for me?
I have a few comments.
Okay.
I don't know what the church can do about the topic you're bringing up, race. I mean, I'm Catholic. We have black people and white people that go to our church, Vietnamese also, probably some Hispanic as well. There are some churches, congregations that are predominantly white. Like if you go to New Orleans, or even around here, if you go to New Orleans, they have certain, black. We would call black churches or white churches.
Right.
It's not official anymore. It's not an official thing, but it's just a traditional thing. And I don't guess there would be anything to do about it. I don't think like Our Lady Star of the Sea needs to go around begging white people to go to their church. And I don't think like St. Dominic needs to go around begging black people to go to their church. People can go whatever church they want to go, wherever they feel comfortable. So I guess churches, the churches that bother me are the ones that seem like they want to, I don't know, like they have a fixation or a hang up. They say, oh, almost an all-white church. We need to have more black members. I don't know why they would need to. Just like I don't know why a black church would need to have more white members. It's almost like they have an inferiority complex. Like,
right.
It's a mostly black church, so we must be inferior. We need some white blood in here to.
Well, let me play a little bit of angel's advocate here with you, and let me ask you kind of from a different perspective.
Angel's advocate.
Yeah, you like that, right? Nobody wants to be a devil's advocate. Let me ask you this though: is there something inherently wrong though with the all quote unquote black church or the all white church? Or are you saying that if people choose that on their own without compulsion from any outside forces, that should be okay?
Yeah, it's my opinion.
Yes.
My opinion is that it would not be inherently wrong. It wouldn't even be on its face wrong. I mean, it's just it would just be what it is. It would only be wrong, really, if like one race was better than the other, or one race was inferior to the other. Then you could say, well, that's not fair because this great, fantastic race over here has this wonderful church and all these wonderful people, and we need to bring in these poor, inferior people, try to lift them up. Or on the other hand, we need these superior people to come in and lift up this sorrowful church with all of us here. I mean, it doesn't matter. What difference does it make? We have countries that are all, like Japan is like 99% Japanese. They're not very diverse. That doesn't make Japan a bad country or inferior or worthless. Or, Japan doesn't need to go import a bunch of non-Japanese to make their country better. And I don't think they're not dying to do that anyway. It's like in my own life, right? I work with people of other races, black people. I have gone to school with black people all my life. And like after work, like I'll say, hey, you want to go to a game after work? Occasionally, like a workmate will go with me to a Pelicans game or whatever, something like that. But generally to hang out together, whatever, after work, there's really no desire for that. They would rather go, in my experience, hang out with their friends who, of course, are black, and they just feel more comfortable. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, I need to work on this. I have to recruit more non-white friends. My life is incomplete. And just like I don't think they're sitting there saying, oh, man, I just don't have a full life because all my friends are black. I hang out in a black neighborhood. We go out to eat together, and we go to church together with black. We need more white friends. There's something wrong with us. Like we have this substandard life. I just don't see why that's a problem. I mean,
no, that's a great point. Let me kind of go dig a little deeper with you on this, because it sounds like you have a pretty solid belief in what you're saying. So let me kind of dig a little bit further with you. If people are self-segregating, if people are staying to themselves,
yeah,
because culturally one group or the other has been taught that the other group either is inferior or out to get them. If people are self-segregating for the wrong reasons, is this an example of the church failing? And how can the church fix that?
Okay, first of all, you would have to do some kind of incredible study, not psychological, but some incredible sociological study to find out what is the reason that people self-segregate. And I don't think anybody has the time to go interview everybody and ask them, why do you self-segregate? Do you have a feeling of inferiority? Here's 2 baby dolls. Which baby doll do you choose? I mean, most people would say, leave me alone. What are you talking about? I'm just going to watch a game with my friends. I mean, what is all of this psychobabble? So I seriously doubt that there's some sort of inferiority complex, to steal a phrase from Sigmund Freud, that people self-segregate. They probably just feel more comfortable because in the world of psychology, we call that affiliation. And what is affiliation? People tend to be more comfortable hanging out with people that are more like them. Okay? Now let me just say this, though. Let me say this, though, Jay.
Huh? Jay, what I'm hearing you, and what I don't know that you are going to be able to touch on is what I've been hearing from non-white people, that whites don't understand what the history of persecution that they've been through, what it means to them, and why they self-segregate.
Well, it's the same thing on my end. I don't expect non-whites to understand me, right? I don't say, well, hey, these black people can't understand my white experience. They need to take some classes and learn what it's like to be white. I mean, first of all, that would be an insult to them, so I don't expect them. And secondly, they probably wouldn't care. Like, why would I care what your life experience is? I mean, unless they had some unusual interest in the history of other races.
No, that's really good, Jay. I appreciate your perspective. We have our guest who's waiting to get online, so I appreciate your input and appreciate your phone call. Thank you, Jay. That's one of the big things that no one really ever looks at is here in the city of New Orleans, the least segregated place is the New Orleans Saints football in the Superdome on a Sunday. Yet on that same day, the most segregated time in our city is in the morning for church. It's kind of odd. 504-527-0800. I want to go to our guest. I have never spoken or had a chance to meet Stanley. Stanley is a self-employed business owner who actually lives in Torrance, California. He's from Atlanta, Georgia. Looks like he went to high school in Virginia, and he's married. But he has an interesting show, and he had posted it on Facebook. And I wanted to bring him on to talk because I think this is one of those shows. This is part of what I think can kind of help to get conversations like the one we're having today, to get some real, genuine thinking going on. He has a radio broadcast that's called Black Man Thinkin, radio broadcast with Stanley. Is it Levy or Levy? Levy, Stanley Levy. Welcome to the show here on The Current Word with Trey Roberts. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Trey. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. First, help us do a little housekeeping. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how people can listen to your show.
Well, you got a lot of it right except for one thing. Somehow I got messed up on social media. The Northside High School I went to was indeed in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, gotcha. So you're definitely a down south guy.
Yeah. So actually, I'm an Air Force brat. My father, I was his last duty station at Dobbins Air Force Base. And so, bottom line, I was in Atlanta from the time I was 10 to the time I graduated Georgia Tech. And from there, did my own time in the Air Force and got dropped off in Southern California. And can't beat the weather, so I'm still here.
Well, I appreciate your service. But let me ask you this. The name of your show kind of... Have you got any flack from it? Because your show seems to kind of insinuate that you are not... You're the exception to the rule, or...
Well, you get flack from people for any type of name when your thinking doesn't go along with theirs. The fact that I'm not a liberal Democrat, I'm not a liberal anything. That alone, I could have called myself Al. Man, it wouldn't have mattered. You were going to get criticized. But yes, the title. The name of the show, which is also the name of my blog, blackmanthinkin.com, is all about one thing: trying to look at this and say, can we get past the fluff? Can we get past the emotionalism? And can we actually see the levers that are at work, whether they're good or bad, and at least talk about that?
Stanley, how do we do that? How do we move past without ignoring the legitimate hurts and horribleness of our past as a nation, and yet live today to sow seeds for a better tomorrow? How do we do that?
Well, the first thing is actually being honest about our past as a nation. Compare our nation to any other nation, and compare how blacks have been treated in this nation compared to any other nation.
Now, why would we want to do that, Stanley?
Well, the thing is, what we have is all that we have a great deal of tunnel vision here in the United States, particularly among black people, who basically, they have a lot of misconceptions. I mean, the idea that, well, the Constitution said you're only 3/5 of a person. No, it didn't. The Constitution and then they don't understand why, because white people hated us. No, the Constitution said anybody who was in a situation of involuntary servitude could not be counted as a full person for the purposes of determining representation in the House of Representatives. Had you not done that, then the slave states in the South would have taken all those slaves and used them to basically get even more representation in the House of Representatives, and it would have been a lot harder for black people. They don't understand that. They don't believe that. And the idea is any honest read of history brings you to there. The problem with black people is that they are an emotional people overall. They've been taught to be an emotional people, particularly over the last half century. It's basically all about how you feel. It's not about what actually happened. It's not about an alternative. It's not about putting the facts together and coming to a conclusion. It is about a preconceived notion, and therefore I look at everything with a filter so that I can determine those things which support my preconceived view, and then we ignore a lot of other things.
Stanley, I'm reading Star Parker's book right now, White Ghetto. It's the third installment of her 3 books that she's written. I understand she's got another one coming out pretty soon. Her first one was her autobiography, Pimps, Whores, and Welfare Brats. And then, of course, her follow-up, which is a pretty big hit, kind of put her on the map, Uncle Sam's Plantation. But White Ghetto is talking about how what we see in our inner cities around America really is a reflection of the moral decay of our middle class across America, regardless of race. And one of the things that she brought up, and I wanted to kind of get your comment on, is she said more than racism over the last 30, 40, 50 years, the internal victimization mentality that's been perpetuated upon the black community, she said, has been the biggest thing to prevent any kind, whatever good came out of the civil rights movement moving forward. It's that I'm always a victim within the community. Can you speak to that just a little bit?
Well, I would say I would take it a little bit differently. What's happened to black people in the last 50 years, for me, the last 50 years is significant. 1964 was a watershed moment in the destruction of the black family. The war on poverty has served no other purpose for blacks than to all
right, well, it looks like we accidentally lost Stanley, so we'll reach out to him and try to get him back on the line. Let's go to line 2 real quick. And we'll see him coming back on. We got him again. Okay, let's put him right back on, and let's see if we can get him back on real quick. Stanley, are you there? Did we get you back? Did we get you back, Stanley? Are you there? Are you there, Stanley? Nope, we don't have him. Okay, let's go to line 2 and let's go to Hi. Hi, is this the Spin Gary Baba?
Yes, you got it.
Hey, go ahead real quick. Hi, I think Stanley's going to be calling us back, but go ahead and make your comment real quick.
All right, well, I want to say I think Stanley's right on the target. I agree with him. Before the Great Society, the, quote, war on poverty, which has been terribly lost. I remember I was here. I saw it. And if you look at the stats, you'll see it also. The African-American families stuck together, husband and wife raising the kids. They may have been poor, but, they ate every night and they were literate. Today, I work with inner city kids. Our ministry is Lamb Ministries, and illiteracy is common. And rarely do we have kids that have parents. It's just tragic what's happened, and the destruction that's been done to the African American through liberalism in this country, through the quote Great Society, which is now nothing but a loser society.
So, Hi, as a minister, let me jump in real quick. As a minister, how are we doing as a church? On this issue of race? I mean,
the church is in a tailspin right now. The overall church in America has become a joke, and I'm even talking about the evangelical church. That's the group I belong. I belong to the evangelicals, and the evangelicals for the overall have become a joke. They're ineffective, and we're rapidly losing. Numbers we are crashing and burning as far as our numbers go. The churches are closing like crazy. The people going to church are reducing tremendously. The church in America, the American church, is a disaster right now, and we're doing almost nothing to help. Now, look, don't want to knock the churches that are doing good stuff. They have some great churches out there, and they have some great Christians who are doing a great work. I'm just talking about the overall big picture, everybody included. It ain't looking good right now.
But what about the issue of race? How are they doing on race, in your opinion?
Well, you have to go from church to church. I mean, I go to some churches where they're now, and let me say something. And now this is a fact because I've lived all around the world. I've lived in many different countries, and I've seen how other people live around the world. And segregation is natural for the human race. And I said human race. There's only one race. They're not different races. They're different ethnicities, but there's only one race. And segregation with ethnicities is natural. And it's natural not just with ethnicity. It's natural with intellect. It's natural with social standing, et cetera, et cetera. When I went to Fort Leavenworth to study counterinsurgency, you have to study society. It's a social studies issue. You have to learn how the people think, how they work together in social settings. So you study social circles. And people have always congregated to their social circle throughout the history of the world. It is natural.
No, that's good, Hi.
It even happens in churches. However, in church, there should never be an effort to enforce, let's say, a social circle.
Right.
It should always be open for any ethnicity, any group, anybody, whatever, any socioeconomic background to belong to that church, to be part of that church. We should never have any kind of prejudice or anything like that in church. That's just totally uncalled for. And if you want an example of what God thinks about racism, you can see with Moses and his African wife, whom God had severely judged his brother and his sister for their racism.
No, that's good. Hi, listen, we have our guest back on. Thank you for your phone call. I appreciate that. And we got Stanley back on the line. Stanley, is that you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, we lost you for a minute there, but I'm glad you were able to call us back.
Yeah, no,
you were taking a little bit different approach to what Starr had said over the last 50 years about and it's been it's been a really important moment to you. You were talking about 64 and the Civil Rights Act. Go ahead and continue with that thought.
Well, it wasn't the Civil Rights Act. It was basically what you had was, the best way to say it is the liberal ending to the Civil Rights movement, between the war on poverty and then the inclusion, don't know why, of the feminist movement into the Civil Rights movement. You basically then set the stage for what we now see in the black family. I mean, now we have, 32% of black men are married. Only 26% of black women are married. Back in the 1960s, that was at least 60%. 72% of our children are born out of wedlock. The whole idea of basically allowing, for some reason, we allowed ourselves to be more susceptible than other ethnic groups to the idea that you can replace the man in the home with a government check. As a result, we've bought into some other notions that are, have proven themselves to be false no matter what your ethnicity, and that is that somebody who does not have a Y chromosome can raise a male child. And you see what we have.
Stanley, let me jump in there and ask you this: the idea that whenever I bring up some of the stats that you bring up, like for instance, while all this talk about cops killing unarmed African Americans like we saw in Ferguson or we see up in New York, I think deaths by police officers, whether justified or unjustified, we're talking about somewhere upwards of 400 a year. Okay.
Yeah, 400 a year.
Which is about 400 too many. Okay, no doubt.
Well, yeah.
But what about the 8,700 murders, victims that African Americans make up, only being 13% of the population? Or what about over the next 12 months, the 350,000 black babies that will be aborted, that will be ripped apart in their mother's womb? Why? And we can trace that back to a specific racist plan, a racist plot through Margaret Sanger and the eugenics movement and Planned Parenthood. But that goes untalked about. That goes unprotested. That goes, the NAACP ain't marching on that one. Why is that? And why am I labeled, as a white guy, quote unquote, I just don't understand, or I'm being critical. I'm trying to save lives, Stanley, and I'm being told I can't criticize. I'm being critical by bringing up these numbers.
Well, you are being critical, but the thing is, you're being critical about something that deserves critique. What you have to understand is that the NAACP, this is not your grandfather's NAACP anymore.
No, that's true. That's true.
They sold out. They sold out to the liberal progressive structure because they actually thought that they were going to get something out of it. And they have gotten exactly what they wanted out of it, and that is a representation of power over black people. That's basically what they have. Now, the thing is that power turned out to be, for them, figurehead. Nobody's paying attention to the NAACP, but they still have a name as though they are somebody important. If you're going to talk, you brought up Margaret Sanger and eugenics. Here is the problem with black people and race, is because they keep talking about this thing in terms of race. They actually think that what's going on in this country is actually a function of race. It's not. Even with what's going on in Ferguson, I bring it to people's attention and say, you know what? What makes you think that this is really about an 18-year-old kid who may or may not have assaulted a cop and got shot for it? Do you really think that all that rioting was about an 18-year-old kid? If that was the case, and there's still so much debated about what actually happened, if it were really about a clear-cut matter of race, then New York City should be on fire right now because of Eric Garner.
Right.
New York City should be on fire because of Denise Stewart, the 48-year-old black woman that the NYPD pulled basically naked out of her house on a domestic violence call, and they had the wrong apartment. New York City should be in flames. It is not.
Right.
Why? It's not about race. It's about power. It is about trying to use race to basically continue to marginalize black people.
No, that's right, and keep control of a voting block of people.
And basically, and this is something that's going to go through on my show tonight. Let me throw it before something else happens. For anyone who wants to hear the show tonight, it is on WDFP.us and /Black Man Thinkin. So that's www, of course, WDFP.us. So that's where it's going to be. It's going to be starting at 8 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. But one of the things I'm going to talk about in there is basically how the marginalization of Black people is continuing, the political marginalization is continuing, and the thing that they're going to do to accomplish that in Ferguson would be something that people would not think of. It's called the Black vote. They're going to basically mobilize people to vote in Ferguson, not realizing that because of how Black people have stopped to think well politically. Malcolm X was right about folks 50 years ago. He said, "You're a bunch of political chumps."
Right.
And basically what they're getting ready to do is move the NAACP and some other people out there, not to do anything purposeful for Black people, but just to try to get them to register to vote.
Mobilize the vote.
Now, if you register a bunch of Black people with a race problem or race fixation, if you register them to vote, for whom are they going to vote in this country?
It ain't going to be the Republican, that's for sure.
And then you ask the question: when is the last time that a Black Democrat in office in any city has done any good for any number of Black people?
Stanley, that's a question that unfortunately doesn't get asked enough, and unfortunately never gets answered because of it. Stanley, I'm definitely over my time, but I appreciate you joining us today. And that website again, is that you said that's WDFT, right?
Yes, Whiskey Delta Foxtrot Papa. Yeah, WDFP.us. And we'll be coming up at 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock your time.
Good deal.
This evening.
Well, I would encourage everybody to tune into that. And Stanley, hopefully we can have you on again in the future.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
That was Stanley Levy of the radio broadcast Black Man Thinking, and you can catch his shows tonight just in a couple of hours. I thank you for listening to us today, and thank you for all the callers who called in on Labor Day. Thank you to WSHO for letting us go a little bit long, and thank you to Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking Radio. If you go on Facebook and look up Stanley Levy or Black Man Thinking Radio, you can catch his show tonight and all the information for you to be able to do that. Thank you to Luke, the board operator. Thank you to Kathleen, and of course to WSHO. I'm Trey Roberts, and just remember, oppose progressivism wherever it rears its ugly head. Illuminate the light of truth. We'll see you next time.